Okay. Cool. Cool. Alright, so here we are. Welcome. This is another video. This is not actually going to be necessarily PvP Warzone gameplay video. This is more just going to be kind of a follow-up to what I kind of started earlier, which was some videos about keybinds and the global cooldown, and this is just going to be a slight continuation of that. So first off, I want to get somewhere where I can move around, and I'm just going to go to a hangar. Alright, so earlier we talked about, the GCD, casting your spells, knowing how to wait and casting your spells. We talked a little bit about setting up your, your UI to allow yourself to see all the things that you kind of want to see here. Come on, shut up. Alright, so movement. Alright, movement and how it applies to you, how it applies to your gameplay, how it applies to the spells that you cast. And this is pretty general. This is something that will apply to PvP or PvE. So when we talk about movement, most people have the following key bindings set up, and I'll find them if I can. And you just go to your movement, and a lot of people, forward is W, jump is space. Those are all the big ones. Some people use a strafe, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then here, turn left, turn right. Those are the big ones. A, D. So really, we're just talking about W, A, D space and your mouse. And there's one last little thing that I will show you guys, and that is how quickly your camera moves, and that's your camera rotation speed. So you can find that under preference controls and camera rotation speed. And this basically just means how quickly you turn your point of view when you turn your mouse, when you're holding down either left click to turn your camera in just the angle, or right click to turn your whole character. Great. So turning, right? I think we just brought that up. That's one of the things, and you've heard this term before. And when we move, and let's say I wanted to see a target that was to my left, the most initial inclination for people to do is to turn, right? So you can see right there, I'm turning. You can see I'm turning at a certain speed. It's pretty constant, right? And this is just me holding down my A and my D button. A and D button, right? Easily turn. This is what we call a keyboard turner, okay? It moves, but it moves at a constant pace that's not necessarily as fast as maybe you'd like in certain cases. Let's say you're being mauled, right, from behind, and you want to turn around so you're not being mauled. Well, if you're holding down A, that might take a full, almost a second and a half to turn, right? Okay, so how do we avoid this, and how do we not be labeled a keyboard turner when we turn? Well, that's when it comes down to holding down your right click. So you can see that my mouse icon is disappearing, right? When it appears, I'm obviously not holding down anything, I'm not clicking anything. The second it disappears, it's because I'm holding down right click. Okay, now when I hold down right click, my character is my reference point, so that means when I turn, he turns. Okay, when I turn, he turns. Okay. Now why is that important? Well, the faster I turn it, the faster he turns around. Right? So the best example of doing this is the how many 360s can you get off in a jump? And that's generally, again, something that you would not be able to do if you were a keyboard turner. So I'll do that again. I'll do it with keyboard turning, and I'll do it with mouse turning. Right? So jump on the air and try to do 360. Okay, I get maybe like 180 degrees, right? Right. Oh, okay, almost 270. Almost 270, right? Not bad. Okay. Now let's see how quickly I can rotate with the mouse just by holding down right click. Okay, just by holding down right click. I'm strafing already. I'm doing a terrible job because I'm already doing stuff that I haven't shown you how to do yet. All right, so let's just focus on how many rotations I can get in the air just by turning my mouse. Okay, ready? Okay, I went around 540 degrees. I went a full 360 and another 180 on top. Okay, compare that to the 270 degrees that I'm getting by just maximum by keyboard turning. So I'm turning around at a rate that's twice as fast, and I can actually increase that, by the way. I could increase that rate by moving my camera rotation speed. The higher that is, the faster you move. Sometimes you don't want it too fast because then you just get dizzy. It happens. But generally, that's basically what you like. That kind of shows the conceptually, it's faster, it's more efficient to use your mouse to turn. So hold down right click, turn. You know, my left hand's off the keyboard. I'm just doing this turning purely based off holding the right click. The downside to this, your middle finger, your right click button, depending if you're righty, will hurt from time to time. Sometimes you'll be holding it down for no joke. I might have my right finger on the mouse button for about 2 straight minutes. 2 minutes is a lot. Over a minute, just constantly moving because I want to be. I'm actually strafing a lot, and that's kind of what I was going to get into. So, all right, what does it mean to strafe? Well, it means that you always want to be a moving target. And this is where movement comes into PvP gameplay. Scenario A, you have, let's say you're attacking somebody, a person. Is it easier to attack a stationary target, or is it easier to attack a moving target? Right. In most cases, you will say it is easier to attack a stationary target. Great. As a result, regardless of what class you are, caster, sniper, whatever, you never want to be stationary for too long, which means you always want to be able to be moving, right? Okay, great. I always want to be moving. Cool. In addition to always wanting to be moving, I always want to be casting spells while I'm moving. Okay? All right. So that's the thing. Always want to be moving. Always want to be casting spells while you're moving. Okay? I think that makes sense to a lot of people. Okay, now let's take it to that next level, right? Casting spells while moving, yet want to do it efficiently. Okay, what does that mean? To do everything in an efficient manner. Well, first thing what comes to mind for me is economy of movement, right? So economy of movement means are you using the least amount of movement to get to where you want to go? And this is twofold. One, it means you're taking the most direct route so you can get there. You know, do you take the best line? If anybody ever does pod racing on planets, you'll be very good at that. The other thing about economy of movement, and this is really, really important, and you will get very good at it once you unbind your S key. By the way, you should always unbind your S key because you never need to backpedal. We'll talk about why later. Is that you don't overrun. You don't overrun. Let's create a scenario. Let's say this is mid of Ancient Hypergate, okay, where all the orbs are. Orb, 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 orb. This is mid. Have you ever noticed that the second you cross the midpoint of that mid, that little cube, you are suddenly going to be taking a shit ton of damage. You are going to get pounded, and it's going to be not fun. Okay, so why did that happen? More often than not, it's because we overextend. Meaning we W too far, we run into too much. What's most people's inclination to after that? Backpedal out. I can't even do that. I can't. I have that. Backpedal out to a safe distance, right? Very inefficient, going back to that word. So step one, never overextend. You know, go just as far as you need to. So really that means keeping an eye on the range. Right? Most of your range spells are 30 meters. Most of your melees are 10 meters. But a lot of that just means, all right, why get anything less than max range? Right? You should be technically you should be max range if you're range shoot all the time, assuming you have line of sight on everything. Great. Okay, let's say you did overextend, right? The old backpedal versus strafe. Okay, so from the time for me to get from here to, let's say, that yellow line, backpedaling. Okay. The time it takes for me to get from here to here, backpedaling. Right? You can still cast, you have line of sight on everything. Okay. Versus the time it takes for me to strafe back there, while still maintaining the same line of sight. Okay, what does that mean? All right, well, I'll explain. So first of all, backpedaling, right? Strafe, while still maintaining line of sight. Actually, this might be a better way. Yeah, so strafe while still maintaining line of sight. So again, I'm moving as fast as I run forward, but I still have line of sight. On, let's say this was my line of sight. Now, why does that matter? Well, I get it. You want to be able to cast as you're retreating. Everybody wants to do that because I said before, you want to be casting while you're moving. And if you full on turned around, well, you have to see what you're casting at, right? So you can't see. So that's why people don't immediately just turn around and run, even though from a time perspective, it might actually be more efficient because you're actually going to take less damage, all that other stuff. Regardless, right? The backpedal method versus the strafing method. All right, so it gets me there. It gets me there faster. Means I'm taking less damage. Right? All these are good things in PvP and PvE. So how do we strafe, by the way? Again, anytime you see my mouse disappearing, it's because I'm holding down right click. So what you do is you hold down right click, turn your camera angle slightly to whichever direction you're going to press. So if I'm going to press A, I'm going to turn left. If I'm going to press D, I'm going to turn right. So let's say I want to turn left and press A. I turn left and I press A, and I'm strafing. Okay. Right. D, and I'm strafing the other direction. Okay. So all that's just holding down the right click. There's a lot of fun stuff to manipulate once you get roll with the camera angles and different directions you can run to. Different ways you can move the camera while you're running. It's all part of just, I guess, getting familiar with movement. Okay, great. So I think we've covered movement. We've covered a little bit conceptually why you want to be using strafing instead of backpedaling. It just, not to mention aesthetically, backpedaling just looks terrible. It looks terrible. It's like who in real life is actually backpedaling while they're doing anything? Pansies. Okay, great. It's like this guy. I backpedal all the time in real life. All right, I wish I could. All right, enough of that. So I'm going to go back to something I said a little bit earlier, and I'm not going to spend too much time because already this video is kind of running a little bit long. Longer than I thought it would. And the last thing I want to talk about is your spells. Okay? So you'll notice this tune is level 10 and he barely has any spells. Barely has any spells. And that's perfect because these are basically your base non-advanced class spells. These are things that you have on your operative, you have on your sniper, right? They're just agent spells, right? They are rifle shot. Alright, stealth isn't, the heal pod isn't. Shiv is, frag grenade, corrosive dart, backstab, cover, debilitate, flashbang. All common spells. All spells that are instant as well. So what does that mean? That means there's spells that you can be casting while moving, right? So if there's spells that you want to cast while moving, well, guess what? You kind of want to put them in places that you can reach while you're pressing W. Does that make sense? So think of it this way, right? You're moving, you're either strafing, and you want to cast a spell, right? It doesn't make sense if, like, you have something bound to, like, I don't know, Y or T or whatever to be casting while you're pressing W, right? Usually the spells that you want to cast while you're pressing W are all very close to the W key. So we're talking about your Q, your E, your R, your 1, your 3, your 4, you know, your 2 if you like that. And whoa, lo and behold, you know, this is my Q, rifle shot, that's my 2, that's my 3, that's my 4. You know, my crouch is my F. Backstab is actually X. That's not the best, but it has a long cooldown, so you're not really spamming it. If it is a spammable spell, though, I probably would have rebounded from X to something that maybe made a little bit more sense. Like when I get later on in my heal spell, when I get like Culto Probe, that becomes my E spell because that's again your spammable spell that you want to be casting while you're moving. A lot of this is trial and error, but really every time you roll a new tune, every time you roll a new alt, the best thing that I can recommend is change all your keybinds when you have fewer spells. So it's much easier to just figure out what works best when you're only doing it with like 6 or 7 spells. Once you start breaking like 12, 15 spells, you're like, oh man, I'm going to rebind this and change my C to my X and then move like shift tab over to something else. It's stick to the basics, work your way up. You'll find that every time you roll a new class, you'll be like, oh, you know what, the first time I got to 55, maybe my rifle shot was my 1, but then I realized, hey, I'm spamming this all the time, I moved it to my Q. A lot of this stuff comes up, but again, you'll find out the more you find out about your gameplay. So gameplay is kind of what we talked about earlier as far as like all that movement stuff, all that economy of movement, all that, you know, finding out, all right, how is it best to turn? How is it best to get to a certain area, right? How is it best to move backwards? When I'm looking at my map, and you should always be looking at your mini-map, what's it mean to overextend? Overextending just means in PvP, your teammates are purple, you're running into an area where there's no purple. That's what overextending means. If you're always clumped around purple, then you're always around your group. Think of overextending as you're the one dude that everybody on the other team is now going to be targeting. All right, great. So anyways, this ran about 15 minutes, which is fine, but despite all the talking, I hope this was a little bit informative as far as the movement. If you have any questions, please post them on the vid. I will be happy to answer any and all of them. And I hope to be making more of these as 3.0 comes out. Because again, all this stuff that we're going over has very little to do with any spells or any particular, as they call, disciplines upcoming. It really is just the basics of movement, of casting all your spells, of always making sure that your GCD is constantly going off and stuff like that. Anyways, that's it for me. Peace out, everybody, and looking forward to the new expansion.